Shake, shake, shake. All right. It's like lifting, y'all. Okay. Welcome. It's going to be some advanced program design, but it's probably going to be a little different than what you may be expecting when you think of program design. We are going to get into like the numbers and things like that and like the technique stuff. But what we got to do first is we got to build a foundation. Because for me, in my experience, when it comes to like maximizing your performance with Olympic lifting, so much of it, as we already know, has to do with all the other shit that's also going on in our lives that have a direct effect on our ability to recover and, you know, be mentally and emotionally there to be able to perform in the gym. So we're going to build a little bit of a foundation of, okay, what's the stuff that's actually important to me that I know I need to be focusing on in my life, and then where does training fit into that? And then once we see that, then we can build into like, okay, this is exactly what you need to do, and this is exactly how you target your weaknesses, your strengths, and everything that you would typically expect when it comes to program design. All right? So the kind of intention here by the end of this session is you guys have you understand the basic principles, at least as kind of I've come to know them and I teach them when it comes to program design. And then with that, you have a direct template to be able to insert into your own training. Because like one of the big questions and I guess challenges that I faced as a coach is, I got to the point where I recognized the importance of having custom programs, because like we're all unique. We all have different life circumstances. We all have different leverages. We all have different strengths and weaknesses. So all of our programs, ideally, they're going to look a little bit different. And so I went through the phase of like I was writing custom programs for every single person. But then even going through that process, I recognized that there's still a lot of similarities. And so a lot of what we're going to teach you today, it's a template that is created to be customized. So it's like, again, once you understand the principles, then you can customize them to your own individual needs, and I'll show you how to break all of that down. All right? And then as far as the technique stuff, once you understand what I'm going to show you here, when it comes to actual technique work, like yes, that stuff is very important, but I find especially with Olympic lifting, because it is more of a technical, they're very technical lifts, it can actually be easy to get lost in the weeds of like, oh, you need this drill, or oh, you need that technique, or oh, you need this program or that thing, and like all these little nuances when, as you'll see, when you really understand the foundational aspects of it, it becomes a lot simpler to address the more nuanced things. And like if you ever watch, something that I do when I'm like to study Olympic lifting is I like to watch a lot of, obviously a lot of high level lifters. And one thing that you'll notice when you watch a lot of high level lifters from all the different countries, like just all over the place, different weight classes, like just everywhere, people that are at the highest level, is that there's really not one technique. You'll see one person do one way at a super high level and hitting like world records, and then you'll see another person doing almost what seems like completely contradictory things and also hitting world records and like doing things at the highest level. So what I like to do, and again, it's just, I guess, part of how I approach programming and really all these different elements, is I like to see what are the commonalities here? Like what are the basic principles that are the same even beyond all the differences? And so when it comes to finding the right technique, it's ultimately finding the right technique for you. Because you can, damn near you can take any program and you can take any technique that is at least adhering to some basic principles, and if you just practice that shit for 10 years, you're probably gonna be pretty decent at it, okay? And so Just wanted to kind of set those intentions off the front. As far as questions and stuff go, I would maybe like write them down, because I feel like the questions might arise and then I'll probably end up answering them as I go. So maybe just like, keep a note of questions, and then once I'm done, then we'll open the floor for a little Q&A. Sound good? Okay, so the first thing that we need to do when it comes to your program design is we have to really get clear on where the hell you're trying to go. It's just like any kind of map that you're building or that you're trying to use, you need to know two things to have an effective map. You need to know where you're going, and you need to know where you're at. So the first place I like to start is just having a general idea of where you're going. And obviously, we're in this kind of lifting seminar, so it's probably going to be very lifting related, but I'm really talking about your whole life. Because again, where is lifting going to fit into that? Do you want to be an Olympic champion? And that's like, I don't care what else happens in my life, I just want to pursue Olympic lifting and nothing else matters to me. Which again, it's not right, wrong, good or bad, but like getting clear, is that what I'm here for? Or is lifting like, I love to lift, but I love to have it be kind of in balance with these other things. And even when it comes to the lifts in general, like, do you just want to be an Olympic lifter, or do you also want to be able to incorporate more conditioning stuff, more like athletic stuff, more even like CrossFit type stuff, or more powerlifting stuff? So you got to get clear on exactly what that looks like for you. And so one of the exercises that I like to do, and we might take like a 2-minute kind of little workshop here just to kind of get an idea, because you'll see how it fits all into it together. But essentially projecting yourself like 10 years into the future and just being like, okay, this is September 9th, 2024. So I'm going to do a journal entry for September 9th, 2034. And you're basically like, this is what my day looks like. This is when I get up. This is what I do. This is what I've already accomplished. This is what I'm doing. So let's go ahead. And again, this is going to be very condensed, but I at least want to get just a starter. And then obviously you can go home and like you can finish it, but at least you've gotten a start on it, and then you can see how it fits in. So let's take like 2 to 3 minutes right now, and you can just go on your phone or whatever and like just create a little journal entry. So this is September 9th, 2034. And like, what's your day look like? And obviously, if you want to keep it lifting specific, you can keep it lifting specific, but we're talking about whole life shit here. And there's no wrong answer. And also recognize that, like, without getting into a whole spiel on it, your potential is limitless. Like, your potential is only going to be limited by what you choose to allow it to be limited by. So when you're putting yourself out in that future, like literally anything. Do you want to wake up on a cloud and, skydive to whatever your office is? Like literally, just even if it sounds completely unrealistic, if that's what you're drawn towards, allow that to be there. All right. Yep, give you a little time here. Oh, you're right. It is the 8th.
Damn it, throws everything off.
Tough. That one day. Okay. So, and we're actually kind of work with this a little bit now. So now you've got at least, a couple sentences, like just a semblance of this bigger picture, which again, when we're trying to build this map, we need to at least have an idea of where we're going. And again, it's okay if it doesn't feel perfectly clear. You just need to have just that general direction, okay? So now we kind of need to come back to the other end and look at, where am I starting? And what we're going to introduce here, and it's going to relate to what we just did, so maybe like just make a couple lines or open up another note or whatever you want to do. But now we're going to identify some processes for your life, some key processes for your life. And so I'll kind of explain a little bit what that is. So I define a process as essentially it's something that doesn't require anything else to happen to get done. So it's going to be something that is within your direct control. So, you know, like if you're saying, oh, I want to win the lottery, obviously there's a lot of other circumstances, a lot of other things, like you're just kind of hoping that that's something that would happen. Versus, I'm going to go for a walk, most likely there's nothing going to be interfering with your capacity to choose to go for a walk. Or like training, like most likely there's not really going to be any main things getting in the way of your ability to go and train. It's things that are within your direct control. So now that you have an idea of that bigger picture, I want you to make a list. And again, this is just kind of like stream of consciousness. Just don't worry about if it's right or wrong or whatever. Just let it flow. But we'll start to make a list of what are all of the main things that really you enjoy to do. And one question that I like to ask myself is, if I had no constraints, kind of like what we just did, if I had no constraints on my time, on money, on resources, on energy, and I could literally just do all of the things that I want to do, what would that look like? Like for me, you know, so obviously like, okay, training, music, writing, content, just being out in nature, walking, studying, cooking, meditating. So just to give you an idea, so now just go through and literally just make a list, a laundry list.
What does that word say?
With this one? It's meditating, bro. This is an A. It's my teacher writing. So we'll do like another 2-3 minutes here. And just, again, we're just gonna go through, just let it flow, stream of consciousness, just start making a list. Like all this shit if I could do anything I wanted, there's no restraints, just what would I do? All right, so by now you've got probably, you know, maybe a list of like 5, 10, 15, whatever, different processes. And again, process is something where like nobody's holding me back, or, you know, the stars don't need to align for me to be able to do these things. Like I can choose to go do these things whenever I want to do them. It's a process, okay? So now we need to start distilling, okay? So the question, and you'll find a lot with, you know, the way that I teach is a lot of it has to do with just asking the right questions. So as we go through these processes, it's like, okay, what's the right question to get the answer that we're looking for here? Because a little rule of thumb, the answers are always implicit in the questions. So if you want better answers, then you got to learn how to ask better questions, okay? And when you know that the potential for any answer is infinite, because potential is infinite, just because you can think of something, it exists as a potential, then that gives you permission to ask better and better and better and better questions, because you're not limited by whatever your perceived limitations are of what you think the answer could be. You know, if I only think that the sky can be blue, I'm not gonna, if that's my fundamental belief, I'm not gonna ask another question that might lead to another answer, because it's outside of what I believe as a fundamental truth, just as an example. So the question that we have to ask ourselves is, out of this list of things, what are the key things that either A, if I just did these things, a lot of the other things would just happen naturally, and B, if I just did these things, what things might just become irrelevant, meaning like they wouldn't be as important, or they could potentially be part of the same process. So as an example, and again, like with, you know, the free course that I do in the kind of the certification program, you know, this is a process that we might take like a whole hour and like really dive deep into to really get clear on that. But I'm just kind of initiating the process here. So for me, just as an example, when I went through this process, I identified 4 key things for me, okay? And that was training, music, content, and what I call design, which is literally just me like just designing my life, you know, and like brainstorming and just like thinking about things and like how do these fit in together? What's the next steps for this? Just taking time to kind of brainstorm about life and design life, okay? And like for instance, for training, when the way I came to that is if I'm focused on training, like I'm gonna be on top of my nutrition. So it's like I'm gonna end up cooking because I wanna make sure I'm fueling my body properly. I'm gonna do like some meditation. I'm gonna go to bed on time because I want to optimize my ability to train. So at least for me, it's not for everybody, but at least for me, all those other elements like the nutrition, like the sleep, like the meditation, and even like studying and things, all kind of end up happening just by an extension of me wanting to be able to train at a high level. And the same thing for like content. Like if I focus on creating content, I'm probably gonna do some writing. I'm gonna be doing some studying. It's the same kind of idea. So what I want you to do now is, and again, it can maybe just be 1, it could be 3, it could be 4, or it even could feel like it's all of them. And it's like there's not a right or wrong answer here. But I want to go through the process now of take the list that you made and see if you can distill it down to what are like the non-negotiable things. That if I just focused on these things, the other things would either take care of themselves or they wouldn't be as important. And they just kind of would become irrelevant. All right? So we'll take another like 2 minutes or so, take the list that you made, and let's break it down even more. Does anybody feel called to just share, just as an example, what they came to as the key non-negotiable processes?
Sure.
What you got?
So I came before, I listened to like around 10. Before I came down to training, friends and family, mentoring, coaching, writing, creating. Okay, cool. Anybody else want to share? No? Okay, cool. Yeah, so the next process, so now that we have these, I'm gonna kind of explain where we would go from here, but because we're gonna stay specific to the training aspect, I mean, I'm assuming that everybody has training on there, or at least some form of working out. Is that correct? Correct?
Key processes?
Yeah. No?
I don't go training.
Okay. Do you have like, is there anything, like what did you put that has to relate to your health?
My health? Have a nucleus, a family.
Okay.
Be of service to others.
Okay.
And all the other two, I don't think they directly relate, but somehow they do. Communicate effectively and not rush the future. Be patient.
Okay. And so, if you don't mind me asking you, from which of those would your training fall into there?
That would be being of service to others.
Being of service to others? Do you feel like, so like when you focus on being of service to others, that you naturally want to try to be the best you can be so that you can be?
I feel that if I can, the mind-body connection, if I'm working out well, hitting my, numbers that I need to hit, and, because my life revolves basically around lifting weights, and that's
okay.
primarily everything. I find that if I can do that better, everything else just falls in place, because I can, function better. I would say I'm more articulate, but I'm more tuned into what I need to do, because I know that, that's my realm, that's what I'm good at.
Yeah.
So everything else just kind of falls in place. I don't have to really think, about anything else. And, then family comes into place after that, because I tend to be more around people of the same nature, or people who are doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And I find that I function way better when I'm around that type of environment. So I would say it doesn't directly influence it, but it kind of falls into place when I'm of service to others, because I have to work out in order to be of service to others.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And that's like exactly kind of the line of thinking that we're going for here, because you're seeing how, like, okay, if I just focus on this, there's a lot of times, like when you made your first list, you know, it might have been like, you know, 5, 10, 15, 20 different things, but then you're starting to see, well, really, if I just focus on this, a lot of those other things kind of fall into that, and they just happen as a byproduct of me focusing on that. And that's, like, I love that, because that's really what we're trying to get out of there. So you see where training fits into that, okay? So I'm gonna initiate this next step, but we're not gonna spend too much time on it, because it's not, I mean, it is actually like very, very important, but it'll be like a whole thing and we'll be here all day. But basically what we've got to do now is taking our key processes, we need to kind of almost zoom back out a little bit. So if these are the key things that you're doing, we need to identify, and I call these life types. So essentially a life type for me, if we've ever heard of the term of archetype, where it's like this, like foundational components, you know, like a mother would be an archetype, where the expression of a mother could show up in literally, you know, an infinite number of ways, but the foundational concept of the mother is an archetype, okay? So a life type is a foundational expression of your being. It's a foundational way of being. And so I'll just give you an example, and we'll kind of stick to the training realm, because, you know, it's kind of why we're here. But when I looked at this and I asked myself, okay, if training is a key process for me, what is that process an extension of when it comes to the way that I choose to show up? And so for me, when I asked myself that question, and again, like it took me, you know, I really had to sit with this, like, and that's where kind of this design work comes in, where you're, at least for me, like I'm intentionally creating space that I can just, you know, like journal or just kind of ask these deeper questions and give myself time to process that. But basically when I came from the training, the life type for me was master, because it was like being a master, being the highest expression that I can be physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. That was where this key process of training came in, okay? And I know that's a little bit of a deeper thing, and it might take some time to work with, but I'm gonna erase this. So we've got all our key processes. All right, so now we're gonna do life type.
What did you say the definition of that was?
Simply, it's a way of being.
Expressions on your being?
I call the expressions are more aligned to the key processes. So it's like the life type is like this overarching way of showing up in the world. And then the process would be an expression of that being. Does that make sense? Okay. So we'll take, I mean, like a minute or so, because again, this is something that ideally we'll spend some more time on, but whatever the one that relates to your training, even if it is training specifically, or Daniel, in your case, it was more of the service to others, try to come up, and again, like a lot of times these things, usually the first answer is the right answer. When you ask the question and you just kind of quiet yourself, the first answer is usually the right answer, the one that just kind of naturally pops up. So when you ask yourself the question, as it relates to training or as it relates to being of service to others, what fundamental way of being is that an expression of? Okay? As it relates to your key process, and we're just going to focus on the one that has to do with training, what is the way of being, which would be the life type, what is the way of
being that that key process would be an expression of. Okay? And again, it'll probably sound like just a general term, you know, master, creator, teacher, lover, leader. You know, these are like archetypes. All right? It's all right. It doesn't have to be perfect. As you'll see even too, as we get into the programming side of it, even the time that we take to come back and kind of make revisions and allow this whole framework to evolve, that whole process in itself is part of the program. You know, just in the same way in your actual training where you're like, okay, I've been doing this for, 4 or 6 weeks. I've been on this program. Now let me take a step back for a sec. Let me see, okay, what went well, what improved upon, what needs work. So the same way we do that for our training, it's the same kind of concept that we're due for all of these different things. But the key thing is that really what we're trying to do is take all of these different things and just make them one thing. And this is how you essentially take, at least from my own experience, because I went from literally trying to just do everything and just being all over the place and burning myself out to then getting to that place where it's like, okay, this isn't sustainable. But every time I did just try to focus on one thing, whether that was training or whether that was creating music or whether that just was like business stuff, whenever I tried to just do one thing, I always felt like there were parts of me that weren't being nurtured. Like I didn't feel fulfilled. And so that's what led me kind of down this path of like, I know the power, and we all know the power of just being able to fully hone in on just one thing. But the key here is, and again, the question, how do we take everything and make it just one thing? Like we're already kind of discovering with these key processes where it's like, okay, if I just focus on this one thing, all these other things tend to just happen naturally. So I don't need to worry about the other things happening if I just focus on the one thing. So we're creating a whole program, or we're creating a whole system that turns all of these different things into just one thing. Okay? So do we got just a general idea of the life type that relates to that area of your training or that area of your life where training would fall in? Does anyone feel called to share what came through?
What athlete? That feels like it's not a fully actualized expression of what you're trying to say.
That can't. I think that'd be fine. Well, when we get to this next step, it might even kind of lock it in more, or it might make it more evident that it could be something else. Anybody else want to share? Nope. Warrior? Perfect.
It just feels like, I don't know, it's a warrior's body, something like that. It's a warrior's body, like a spiritual mind, you know what I mean? Like, not being strong and capable just because it's you build this when you build the body.
Mm-hmm.
Your spirit's built. Like focus on like training and like you said, like it all falls together, like your nutrition and like you said it perfectly, like everything falls around your training. The way you handle your mental, your nutrition and like your stress, that's all about like keeping your body like as physically strong and as healthy as possible.
Yeah.
That's how you do all the other stuff. So where it's felt like they encompass like all those things together. Like sharp, body sharp, mind sharp, everything's just sharp.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, like I mean, it can literally be anything, and that's why I say like, don't get too caught up in is this the right one for me? Because even the words are only as good as the definitions that we choose to give them. So even within the athlete or the warrior, like whatever your intention is behind that, which is kind of this next step, is like it could be a perfect fit for whatever you're going for. Because like how one person defines warrior might be completely different than the next person. But what really matters is like, is your own unique definition and how that resonates with you, does that feel aligned with what the intention is behind it? Okay? All right, so now that we have our life type, and again, you would do this for all of those different key processes. You'd be like, okay, so we got the training aspect or like the being of service to others. And like, for instance, what's up?
I don't mean to interrupt, but I just feel it might just get off. Just being a servant. I know it sounds, the term servant in this day and age, it sounds very not horrible, but it doesn't sound as high. It's not in the order of things in life. If you're a servant, it doesn't sound like you're very important.
Yeah.
But I take it in the sense that if I'm a servant to other people, I'm never a servant to my own body.
Yes.
I will never fall temptations. I will never fall into temptations of the flesh to do the wrong things. Maybe be lazy, maybe not eat the right thing, maybe not do the right things. If I'm always of service, my mind is already in tune. Hey, okay, my body today, I'm not feeling the greatest. Or let's take a day off. But then I understand where my role fits in. And then I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna let my body dictate to me. I'm not gonna be a servant of my body. I'd rather be of service to others. And with that said, kind of with what was said earlier about being a warrior, then it falls into that realm. And I was like, wow, so being a warrior for me, I have to be of service to others. But that means being a servant. But when you tell somebody you're a servant, everybody is like, oh,
Yeah.
that's not really the greatest word to put it at, but in actuality, it really is. So that to me, what was said earlier about being a warrior really resonated with, for myself, being a servant, being of service to others, because a warrior never falls under the temptations of what his body tells him to do. He always receives those. And what you said earlier about limitations, they don't even come into play. It's a job to be done.
Yeah.
It gets done.
Yeah, and that's beautiful. And again, that's exactly where we're heading. Is like, what does this mean for me? Because again, like when you say servant, I can resonate with that because it's like you're being of service to the whole. And like for me, in kind of my own language, it's like being an empty vessel for God or for spirit or whatever language that you want to put behind that, but just being an empty vessel for that to move through and to be able to show up and to serve in whatever way. So that's perfect. Okay, so beautiful. So we've got our life types. So now I'm going to show you this next process. We're not going to do the whole thing, but I'll show you it so we can at least kind of get things moving and at least the process of it. So this is what we call the Divine Nine, okay? So you've got your life type, and now we go to the Divine Nine, which as it says, it's a 9 steps, although they're not necessarily steps, but they're 9 aspects of your life type, okay? So number 1 is the intention. So what is the ultimate intention? And the way that I define intention is it's often something that is intangible, but it's like, what is that personal knowing or the highest expression of what it means for me of that life type? So like, I don't quite remember mine off the top of my head, but like the master life type, it's kind of, the intention behind it is developing a level of developing the highest expression of myself physically, mentally, and emotionally and spiritually so that I can be of service to others. That's kind of the intention behind that life type for me. And as you can see, intention is often intangible, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because it's just a knowingness. Like you don't necessarily know like, okay, I have reached this realization of the intention beyond just your own knowing, which you'll see how we kind of step that down. Because quite literally what we're about to go through is it's like an alchemical process of manifestation, where which is literally what we're doing right now, where we went through this process. Okay, we got all these ideas, which is the air element. When we talk about alchemy, we've got all these ideas, and now we kind of distill that down, and now we're setting some intention, which is the fire element. Okay, so it's like the step down process. And then step 2 is purpose. So once you have defined your intention, which let's go ahead, because this one is important. Let's go ahead and take like a minute or two and take that life type, you know, the athlete, the warrior, the servant, whatever it may be, and let's create an intention. What is the ultimate expression of that life type for you? Again, it could just be a sentence long, could be a couple sentences. We'll just take a little bit and we'll define that. Anybody want to share? No?
Mine said the warrior is to sharpen my mind and body to their fullest potential for the purpose of protecting those who need it and inspiring those as well. You talked about service and how like what I said is probably I think the same thing. Like I think for me being a warrior is about like serving as well and like being a vessel of like, you know, like protection and like inspiration and like, you know what I mean, like just making sure that I'm like as on as I can be and like perfectly like you also like you said like a warrior, like just acting the way a warrior would act, like not giving in to temptation, not letting my body dictate how I act and what I feel, and that's like perfect. It's something I've been like working on for a long time. It's like it's an ideal version of myself. It's like very like sharp and very mindful and very like on, but like also still, you know, very loving and supportive and like kind, like not just like hard and like stoic, but also very understanding and compassionate, but like letting the warrior like kind of like lead that like a love warrior. You know what I mean, if that makes sense.
Perfect. And that actually brings up a good point that I can mention here, because there's always going to be complementary opposites. It's like the yin yang, the hot cold, the wet dry, the masculine feminine, the day night, the light dark. Like wherever you go, and like at a deeper level, in order to even have a relationship with anything, there's always going to be these complementary opposites, like subject object. So even when it comes to your life type, and this is something that I did, is what would be the opposite of that? So like for instance, for me, the master, on the other side of that is the apprentice. And like my other ones, so there's a creator. On the other side of the creator is the disruptor. And then there's the leader. On the other side of the leader, for me, is the lover. And then there's the teacher. The other side of the teacher is the student. So it's like on the just having that awareness of what is on the other side of that, is that kind of can like tie it all together and give you a little bit of an idea of the kind of the complete expression of it. Because again, like a master doesn't exist without an apprentice. Like both go hand in hand. A teacher doesn't exist without a student. Both go hand in hand. So seeing what is on the other side of that for that life type. It could just be helpful to build a complete picture. Okay? And then you kind of already went there, but yeah, the number 2 would be purpose. And this is going back to kind of the alchemy concept, this would be the water element. So this is when you get your purpose, it's like that emotional charge where, okay, based on what my intention is, why is this important to me? Why is it important for me to realize this intention? One of the ways that you can go about trying to figure out what that is just say your intention and then just add in so that, or because, like I want to be the highest expression of, you know, physically, mentally, emotionally, whatever, because, and then that's the purpose, okay? Again, we're not gonna spend too much time on this. We'll kind of roll through the rest of these, but we are gonna get to, you'll see where it all ties together here as we go, okay? But this would be the water element, because the water element, the emotional charge, is what takes the intention and puts it into tension, okay? Number 3, intention is fire.
You said that was air, ideas.
No, the ideas, which is what we first did, ideas, like just when you created your list or when you did your journal entry where you're just kind of like getting ideas, that's the air. And then when we take from all the different ideas and we collapse it into, no, this is what I want to focus on, that's the intention, that's the fire, okay? And then the water is the emotional charge. Why is this important for me? Okay. And then number 3, this one is very important. This is the ultimate result. And this is the earth, as you'll see. Ultimate result. Okay. Now we are going to take a little bit of time on this because this one specifically informs some of these other ones. So if your intention is often intangible, meaning that you can't like necessarily see it. If I were to show you like, yo, this is your intention, like a physical expression, most often you can't really weigh it, you can't really measure it, you can't like necessarily check it off on a box like, yo, this happened, but it is a knowing. And like for me, intention is the most important thing because that really is kind of that driving force. But in order to create a system around it, we need to have something tangible to work with. So your ultimate result, the question that you're going to ask yourself is, what is the ultimate tangible expression of the intention? And as an example for mine, so if my ultimate intention was, to be the highest expression physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually so that I can help other people, for me, and this is where you can literally like just make whatever makes sense to you. You just literally make it up. The ultimate result for me is to be a world champion at the game of life, which that's a whole other topic. Another way, like what I used to say before that all came into being, was to be a world champion Olympic weightlifter and power lifter. Like that was the ultimate, if I had to like just pick something, which again, like being a world champion Olympic lifter and power lifter, even though yes, it's cool and it is important and it is a driving force, it's not as important as the intention for me. But it is something that is like, this is the highest expression that is tangible, that gives me something to work with, that gives me something to create a system around, that gives me something to move towards. So now we'll take a couple minutes now. And so based on your intention, what would be the ultimate tangible expression for you that would be a physical representation, a physical manifestation of the intention? Okay? We'll give a couple minutes here. Okay. All right. So we probably at least got some ideas down. So now we're gonna keep this train rolling here. As a quick like little intermission here, I'm just curious. Does this feel like helpful so far, or are we like, can we just get to the fucking programming yet? I'm just curious as like a general feeler, and you can be honest with me here.
Feels good because I would say, from a very literal standpoint, yeah, it's like what's the programming stuff, but I think having a why behind it makes it make sense. Like eating healthy, why? You know what I mean? Like just, there's a lot of times you might think, oh, fruit and vegetables don't taste as good as like fast food and like not healthy stuff, so why would I just eat that? But it's like the why is like, I want to be healthy, I want to move good, I want to whatever. So I think there's value in like some foundation. Like why would I then go pursue a high level weightlifting program? Why would I then pursue like, you know what I mean? Like why would I put myself through all this training? It's like hard and like uncomfortable. Why would I do all this? If I didn't have a why that was like strong, like it would be easy to fall off of that. It would be easy to like, oh, this is for me now. You said like being a servant, like that's gonna get you up out of the day. It's gonna like make you show up when you don't feel like showing up. It's gonna make you do the right thing when you maybe it wouldn't be as convenient to do the right thing. So I think having that, like, getting clear on the why is like really important.
Cool.
I say that the ultimate result should be, I had this as ultimate purpose, number 2, the pillars. The pillars of life. I think, because I say as number 2 for the purpose, the pillars, they need to be clearly defined and clear cut. Because, natural law can never be circumvented. When you just said, is this helpful in programming? As you said earlier, mentioned earlier, I've got different limbs, lifting weights.
Yeah.
I got different dimensions. So if I do understand that I have to, you know, there are basic fundamentals, the principles, but those are, you know, those are the fundamentals. But the little things, you know, the nuances, you don't want to get lost in them, but I have to understand my dimensions. And then now I said for the ultimate results, you know, you have to put the pillars into practice, you know, and natural law is always in motion. It's never, you know, it's never set into play or put into play. It's always just constant motion. You can never say, oh, it's stopped, or we want to put this into play. It's already there. Those are pillars that are clearly defined. And you know, most people don't understand those things. You know, you might walk into the gym and you're like, it has its own natural law.
Yeah.
You know, you can't just start at 150 kilos.
Yeah.
You know, you got to start somewhere. And that's what I understood. You know, you have to have those pillars clearly defined, because there's so much information now that people don't really understand the real pillars of what's really out there. And you know, especially with gym culture now, it's like when you walk into the gym, you expect it to hit certain numbers. It doesn't work like that, because those aren't the pillars that were there before. Those aren't the things that are in motion, because this is what you see. Because people don't really know what the pillars are. They're not clearly defined. So that's why I say the ultimate result, you know, should be the pillars. They need to be clearly defined. And
Beautiful. Beautiful. I love it. All right. Okay, so we're gonna blaze through these next ones, and then like once we do this, you'll like the actual training program, because this is all going to inform what the actual training program is like, which is why we're doing this, as you'll see. But once you go through this process, like I feel like that there's gonna be like, it'll click where it's like, okay, I see exactly what the path looks like now. Which again, going back to the map, it's like I know where I'm going, I know where I'm at. And now, okay, let's draw the line. Let's get clarity on this is exactly what needs to happen now. All right? So number 4 is modes of expression. Or no, take that back. Number 4 is roles or masked. So number 4, basically roles or masters. What are the different ways in which I show up within this life type? So, you know, for me as a master, that might be an athlete, or that might be a spiritual leader, or that might be an entrepreneur, or that might be a mother, or well, probably not a mother for me, but that might be a father or a leader, whatever that might be. Basically just like, what are the different roles that I play within this life type? Because that can give you some idea of like, okay, I might be showing up and I might be called to show up in different ways, all under the umbrella of this lifetime, okay? So we're not gonna, you know, you just have that down, but we're not gonna go through that. So role/masked. Number 5 is 3 to thrive. Or I call this modes of expression. So this is, what are the 3 things that if I just focus on these 3 key things, that it's going to continue to move me towards that intention and the ultimate result. So like for me, I think if I remember off the top of my head, it's like, if I just focus on training, if I just focus on my studies, and if I just focus on my own spiritual practices, if I just do those 3 things, like regardless of anything else I put into place, I know I'm at least gonna be moving in that direction. So that's 3 to thrive. All right. And then number 6 is resources. And that's, so you got internal resources and you've got external resources. So this would be like, I can go to the gym, or I know I have, you know, I have a capacity for discipline. I know that's a strength for me. That's an internal resource I can draw upon. I have, you know, coaches and mentors. I have books and courses, like just whatever kind of resources, you're just kind of listing, these are the resources that I have available. So you just have that clarity of, okay, this is what's already here that I can access that's gonna help me move towards my result and intention. All right? And then number 7, make sure I got this. We got intention, purpose, result, roles, mass, 3 to thrive. And then number 7, I might miss one, but we'll be all right. So number 7, you've got 1-year results and 90-day result, okay? And this one we are gonna take some time on. So really you wanna make sure, now that we're building out this process, the key things is you've got alignment here, you've got alignment here, and you've got alignment here. And actually, I'm gonna build out the rest so you can see where we're going, and then we'll kind of circle back. So number 8 is the key process. And then number 9 is KPI plus frequency. All right, and then you want to make sure you've got alignment here. So what you're going to do now is you're going to go to number 8. You're going to look at your key process, because ideally what you want to do is have this system set up so that the key process is what you would just naturally do anyways. So that might be like, for me, that's training. Like, because I know if I just focus on training as my key process, it's gonna move me towards this ultimate result. Like if my ultimate result is be a world champion Olympic lifter and power lifter, then the key process, which is just something I would naturally do anyways, it's just something I already love to do. If I just do what I love to do as the key process, it's going to move me towards the ultimate result. That's why I said you want to make sure there's alignment here. And so once you get clear on what that key process is, then in the same way that you did the ultimate result, we're going to define, okay, what's 90 days look like? What's the 90-day result that lets me know I'm moving in the right direction? And then what's the 1-year result that lets me know I'm moving in the right direction? So like for me, for example, my 90-day result is to get a 300 kilo total for my Olympic lifting. That's the 90-day result that's letting me know I'm moving in the right direction. And my 1-year result is to place top 3 at the American Open Finals, okay? Which again is like, okay, if that's my 90-day result, that's my 1-year result, then my key process, like I need to train. That's gonna be the biggest thing that's gonna move me towards that. So we'll take a couple minutes now and we'll define the 90-day and the 1-year result, if you haven't already. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. We can go and, continue to adjust and build this out. So once you got the 90-day and the 1-year result, and again, you want to make sure there's alignment here, because if your 90-day and 1 result, like for instance, if my ultimate result is to be an Olympic champion, but then my 90-day result is to, I don't know, lose 20 pounds, then that might not necessarily be in alignment with what the ultimate result is, okay? So then you've got your key process, and then number 9, now this is where we'll finally we have what we need to really build out an effective training program, okay? So number 9, and we'll kind of circle back, make sure we all got this before we move on. Number 9 is KPI plus frequency. So KPI stands for Key Performance Indicator. So the Key Performance Indicator is what we are going to be measuring to let us know that we are moving in the direction to realizing our 90-day results specifically, and then the 1-year result. So like if my 90-day result is to achieve a 300 kilo total in the Olympic lifting, then what do I need to be measuring to let me know that I'm moving towards that 90-day result? And it's kind of like, if anybody has any familiar with like business, you have, okay, these are the different things that we want to be measuring to get better at, and we have specific goals, whether it's like sales or marketing or whatever. It's the same kind of concept. So my KPI is going to be my total. I need to test my total to know if I am moving towards what I say is my 90-day result, okay? And then obviously my 1-year result, which is like, again, these are all in alignment. And the key thing is that
they're all in alignment with the key process, which is why we define that first. Because if you're not doing what you love to do, then you're not going to you're most likely not going to put all of your effort and passion into that thing. But when you're just doing what you love to do, all these other things, like you're just creating alignment around that, okay? And then the frequency is how often am I going to measure it? Like how often makes sense for me to measure this key performance indicator to let me know that I'm moving in the right direction. And for me, what I defined is weekly. So like literally my KPI is my weightlifting total and I measure it weekly, okay? So let's go ahead and make sure there's alignment and clarity on these, specifically the KPI and the frequency. Like what are you measuring and how often are you measuring it to let you know that you're moving towards your 90-day result. And this is like, you might have to get a little creative here. Can I give an example? Yeah, so again, like for me, my key process is training, because that's what I love to do. And that's what we've already identified. And if my 90-day result is to get a 300 kilo total, then my KPI that is in alignment with that is my total. I'm going to measure my total, which means I'm going to test my total, and I'm going to do it weekly. And like another example, so like from one of my other life types, which is I think the creator life type, my key process is 1 YouTube video per week. That's the key process. And then the KPI, the thing that I'm measuring, is my total number of YouTube views, and I measure it weekly because that all aligns with the ultimate result, the intention, and the whole system. Okay? And again, like we kind of spend a good amount of time on this in the program and in the course, but once we have this, now we can build the program. Now we can get into the meat and potatoes here. All right? So before we move on, I want to make sure, do we all have a KPI and a frequency at the very least? Got it? What's yours?
So, I guess for the winning result, for example, so to win the Burn Active Games and to be at the honor field. So my 90-day goal is a 250 kilo total.
Okay.
And that's to increase conditioning. It's arbitrary. So KPIs would be like total, relative total, and like my movement efficiencies, like burpees and stuff like that. Like my movement's a little easier to do across the energy. Like so once a week, obviously, you can see those things are increasing.
Cool. Oh, I didn't know if you want to share your KPI.
KPI?
Yeah.
My
Total?
total.
Huh? Weightlifting total? You share your KPI, or do you got it?
I just said, when I am accountable, that's when you can really measure the frequency, when you actually place everything, the divine line into place. I hope I'm not talking too much, but it's, for the 1 year result, I say I have to ensure that all these aspects are actually in alignment
Yes.
for my 1 year result. In the 90-day result, I have to place these aspects, the divine line into practice every day for 90 days.
Okay.
And then that's what brings me to number 9. Once I become accountable with these things, then that's when I can measure it.
Okay.
Otherwise, I feel for myself, I'm really haphazard. So I have to make sure that after 1 year, am I in alignment actually? And then after 90 days, have I put these into place? And then when I'm actually accountable, that's when I can have this frequency to start saying, okay, let's measure these things. And, yeah.
So what then is what's the KPI that's letting you know that you are moving
In the right direction?
Yeah.
That would be basically, I haven't thought of that.
Yeah.
I'll be honest.
Okay.
I haven't thought of that.
And just again, this can take some time, but just as an example, it could be as simple as like I do a 10-minute journal entry every week. Like just as like something, again, it's kind of almost arbitrary, but it's something to let you know, like if I want to hold myself accountable, what is that tangible thing that is going to let me know that I am holding myself accountable? And that could be like, okay, every Sunday or whatever, I just take 10 minutes and I kind of do a journal entry just to continue to know that I'm moving forward in that, towards that 90-day goal. But that's something that you can like, okay, I can check it off a box. I did my 10-minute journal entry, just as an example, okay? All right, so now we'll get into the program now, y'all. Anybody picture or whatever, but there it is, I'm gonna erase that. Okay, okay. So we're gonna keep things simple now, and honestly, that was like the hardest part of this. Now we can kind of like, everything else will be pretty smooth sailing from here, but by the end of this next section, you'll literally you'll know what you need to do every day as it comes to your training program, okay? So we're gonna keep it simple, and we're just gonna, since most of us, our KPI is our total, our weightlifting total, okay? And again, it's not wrong if it's not, or like it doesn't really, it's whatever is unique to you, but just to build out the system, we'll just stick with that. So if the weightlifting total is our KPI, then that becomes the thing that we're testing, okay? And if we're testing it weekly, then we know, okay, we want to test the Olympic lifting total weekly, which means that we're going to, in essence, in some capacity, we're going to hit a total, meaning we're gonna max out in a sense on a weekly basis, okay? And that's the thing, when it comes to programming, which for me was a big breakthrough, because again, you can get so lost in all the nuances and let's do this drill, let's do things off the blocks, let's do this, let's do that exercise, let me try this cue, let me try that thing. But if we know that what we're trying to improve upon is the total, and the key test to know if we are improving upon the total is to just do the damn total, then there's a principle in strength and conditioning. It's called the SAID principle. SAID stands for specific adaptation to imposed demand, which basically means you get better at exactly what you do. So if you want to get better at the snatch and the clean and jerk, the best thing, if you did nothing else, the best thing that you could possibly do to get better at the snatch and the clean and jerk is to do the snatch and the clean and jerk, okay? So now I'm gonna introduce to you another fancy strength conditioning term. This one, I made it up. It's called specificity prioritization. We're gonna write that down. Specificity prioritization. All right. So that's it. We just sound smart and now we're done. So basically what this means is, how do you order the different things that you are going to be doing to help you get better at the thing that you're trying to do? So if you're trying to get better at the Olympic lifting total, at the snatch and the clean and jerk, how do you prioritize the different elements of training that's going to help you get better at the snatch and the clean and jerk? So number one, like I already said, is the test. Because again, if you did nothing else, if you just did the snatch and the clean and jerk, you'll get better at the snatch and the clean and jerk. All right? Number two, so basically now we're stepping down. So what would be the next most important thing for me to focus on when it comes to helping me get better at what I'm trying to get better at? And that would be, and again, at least for me, what I've come to in my experience is to focus on what are the weaknesses that are limiting factors in me getting better at the thing that I'm trying to get better at. And when we go through this, I'll show you specifically, how do you identify your weaknesses? How do you identify these different components so you know what to focus on? And then how do you break that into a training program? All right, so number two is weakness. Okay? Number 3, the third most important thing is the strength. So these are the things that I'm already strong at, but I know if I get stronger at them, they're gonna help the test go up. They're gonna make the test better, okay? So strength. Number 4 is, come on, accessory, okay? So basically accessory is the things that help me to continue to do the other things. So like the like what we most associate with accessories. They're like different movements that keep me healthy, that keep me, like make sure my joints aren't falling apart, like whatever that looks like. They're different movements that help me to continue to do the other things that help the test get better, okay? Number 5 is specific. So essentially the specific is just doing more of exactly the thing that's gonna help me get better at what I'm trying to get better at, all right? And so that would look like, if we're talking about Olympic lifting, and again, as I like circling all the way back to the beginning, I wanted to create this in a way that could be highly specific to whatever area that you're trying to be specific with. So if we're talking about Olympic lifting, we can use this framework to be highly specific to Olympic lifting, but it's also transferable to literally any other thing that you're trying to get better at. So if like I'm trying to get better at my 40-meter dash, for instance, or my 40-yard dash, it's like that's the test. So what are the weaknesses in relation to that test? What are the strengths? What are the accessories? It's the same concept. And then the specific, like I said, is just doing more of the same thing and maybe a slightly different capacity. Because again, the SAID principle, specific adaptation to oppose the man, I get better at exactly the things that I do. Number 6, the last one, is technique. And you'll notice here that, what?
This is letters.
Tech.
What's N? Oh.
Technique. Okay? And you'll notice here that, especially in Olympic lifting, the shit that we like to get overly consumed with is actually number 6. So it's like the technique is now the isolating different components that are going to be able to put back together to the test, okay? But again, this is number 6. And again, it's not to say that you don't do any technique work. It's just saying that in the level of what's important, just doing the damn thing is the best thing that you could be doing, okay? But obviously, yes, you're gonna focus on all of these in a complete program in some different capacity in different times. And what I'm gonna show you next is how to lay out your week and then how to structure basically like periodize your program, meaning like, okay, how does it change week to week, month to month, in order so, you're like not burning yourself out. Because obviously we could just max out every day. And yes, that is very specific, but more than likely that's not gonna be sustainable. You're gonna, especially if your technique is shit, or if you have a lot of other weaknesses that you're not addressing, that's not gonna go very far. Even though, yes, it is highly, highly specific, okay? So I'll show you how to break that down. So this is the specificity prioritization, which again, it's like going from the most important thing that you could be doing to the least important thing that you can be doing, okay? We're gonna erase it. Let's see what this 20, 15 minutes, okay. All right, so now the next concept, or like the next question that we need to ask ourselves is, if that's like the overarching, these are the specific components of a program, now we need to ask ourselves, well, what are the specific components of like an actual training session, so that we know how to create each individual training session. And so essentially you've got, there's 2 main ones that people know, and then there's a third one that is also important but is less talked about. So you've got new color. So we'll call them training components.
Not that one. So you've got intensity, which is like how, or well, we'll do volume first. You got volume, which is like what is the overall amount of work, just the total amount of work that I'm doing. That's the volume. Okay. And then on the other side of that, you've got intensity, which in the technical term, like intensity means relative to how much I can do, how much am I doing relative to how much I can do, which is usually in the strength training world is defined as like a percentage. So like a percentage of your 1 rep max. So you could be like, you know, I'm doing 90% of my 1 rep max, which would be a relatively high intensity. Okay, so that's intensity. And then in between here, the third component, which is less talked about but still important, is density. So the way that I look at density is how much I'm doing within a given amount of time and space. Like how condensed is things. The more condensed the training is, the higher the density it would be. Huh? I know, this ends up happening. I hold on to a bunch of markers. Okay? So density. Boop. Okay, so we've got volume, we've got intensity, and we've got density. So now, how do we give some measurement to that? And so again, I wanted a way that even this concept could be transferable, and as most of us have already come across in our training program, like you might show up one day and it's like, oh man, I got 4 sets of 2 at 90%, and like for some reason, you know, maybe you didn't sleep well the night before, or you didn't eat enough, or you know, whatever the case may be. There's a million different factors, but it's like you trying to do 4 sets of 2 at 90% is just like, it's not happening. Okay, and that was something that, you know, me being an athlete, like I ran into over and over again, where I'd have days where it's like, I feel amazing, like this feels really light. And then I've had other days where this, like even 80% feels impossible, okay? And so this is where, you know, I do like to bring in the concept of the rate of perceived exertion, which is like, most people look like RPE, which is usually out of a scale, it's usually out of a scale of 1 to 10, but I like using a 5 scale, okay? So basically, we relate each one of these on a 1 to 5 scale, okay? And again, we'll tie this all together here. So just as an example, you could have like a 2, whoa. So you have a 2 out of 5, and then you could have like a 3 out of 5, and then a 4 out of 5, okay? So I won't get, well, we'll see. Because there's, when I break this down, which if, you know, we don't want to be here for too much longer here, but if I break this down, there's different ways that you can look at this. But basically the easiest way to look at this and to read it is 2 sets. So the volume is 2, so that's 2 sets, 3 reps at a 4 out of 5 intensity. Okay, so another way you can write it would be like 2 by 3 at 4. Okay, is this making sense so far? We holding on? Okay. Now, just to give you like a little taste is, remember the density, and this is why I put this in the parentheses, because the density is the one that could change the most. So like density, it could mean 3 reps if you just wanted to keep it simple, but you could also relate density to time. So that might be, so like a 1, just to put it, so 1 could equal, if we were looking at rest period, because again, that's another way, because you could do 2 sets of 3 and take like 5 minutes of rest, or you could do 2 sets of 3 and take like 15 seconds of rest. And like just that, changing that one variable could have a completely different stimulus on what you're getting out of that, even though the volume and the intensity
are the same, okay? So another way to look at the density could be, this is less than 30 seconds would be a 1. Or no, I take that back. That would be time under tension. So there's rest periods, meaning how long am I resting in between the sets? And then there's time under tension, which is how long am I doing this thing for, okay? So if we're talking about rest, a 1, which again is low, it's low density, would be essentially like 5 minutes plus, okay? It's like you just take as much time as you need to perform at that level again, you know, like typical strength training. A 2 would be 3 to 5 minutes. A 3 would be 1:30 to 3 minutes. A 2 would be 30 seconds to 1:30. And then a 4. A 5 would be 30 seconds or less, okay? Now, if you were to do this as time under tension, you would essentially flip this. So like a 1 would be less than 30 seconds. Like if you're doing a 1 rep max, it's gonna take less than 30 seconds, okay? Or a 5 would be like 5 minutes plus. So it's like you're doing a lot of time under tension, okay? And then for the reps, one of the ways to go about reps, if you're doing more of like accessory exercises, where, you know, typically like three reps might not make sense for like bicep curls, for example, you would essentially, if you just wanted to keep it simple, you just double it, okay? So 3 could be 6 reps. Now again, like this is where we get more into the weeds of like the actual day-to-day, and this is where as an individual, we kind of do what makes sense for you within that day. But the basic premise is that this is created so that there is that it's a template that you can make more and more individual depending upon your needs, okay? So as a general concept, does this flow? Is this making sense? Okay, so now I'm gonna show you how to build out a week of training and how we kind of incorporate all of these different things. Okay, so 1 week, we got 7 days. Five, 6, 7. And now one concept that we need to, so those numbers that I just showed you, they're scalable. So it's like you can do it for 1 day. So like, or you could do it for 1 exercise. So 1 exercise, let's say you're doing a back squat, it could be 2 sets of 3 out of 4, like I just showed you. Or you could do that for the day, which I'm gonna show you how to do that here in a second, where the day average could be 2, 3, 4, okay? 2 volume, 3 density, 4 intensity. And then even the week, you could scale it out to a week where the week average is 2, 3, 4. And again, I'll show you how this all breaks down. And then you can even scale that out into, like if we were doing a whole training cycle, whether that's like, you know, 4, 5, 6 weeks, it would be the same thing where, okay, this phase of training has an average of 2, 3, 4. And then you can scale that out, like literally, it's like you can just keep going out and out and out. And the way that we program with Optimal Evolution, I took it all the way out to 4 years, because that's like that's like an Olympic quad. And basically each year has a different theme. And actually it will be helpful to go through that, and then we'll break it back down. So we need green, blue, red, orange. And so now this is how you'll see how to create rhythms in your training so you're not burning yourself out. So again, we start at like the biggest macro, because again, the question is, what is the biggest amount of time to like really, you know, see some big changes, but not too big to where too much shit might happen within that amount of time, okay? Like if we said, you know, if we're trying to do a 20-year training cycle, it's just not practical, because it's like so much could happen in 20 years. But then even like a year is still relatively, like for me, that still feels too small. Because again, like within 1 year, if you look at an Olympic quad, that's 4 years, like 1 year, there's still
we can still broaden that scope out a little bit. So that's why we decided upon 4 years. And I like the number 4, as you'll see, because qualitatively the number 4 has to do with the number of completion, okay? And so I asked myself the question, like, okay, what kind of rhythm would make sense if we're looking at 4 years? And then, I like to relate to nature, because like you're talking about just, if you just look at the laws of nature, you can learn a lot about yourself and about really the world in general. In nature, there's 4 seasons, okay? You've got spring, you've got fall, you got summer, you got winter. So actually, we'll write that out. So, spring, and then summer, fall, and winter. Okay? And so then I asked myself the question, well, if these are the seasons that are in nature, how does that relate to training? And like, what would be the correlate of each season as it relates to nature? And so, to give you the answer, spring is prep. So that's when we prepare our body, a strength and conditioning technical term, we call that like GPP, general physical preparedness. I just call it prep. Okay? And then summer is related to building. That's like when the majority of the work happens. Again, if you just think about the nature, like the days are longer, so there's more activity in the summertime. That's the build season. Okay? Let's check on this bad boy. All right, and then the fall is the harvest. Fall's peak. So this is when we want to realize our full potential, the peak. And then the last phase would be rest, because you got to rest. Okay? And if you wanted to just so you can get an idea of where you can really take this concept, you can also relate this to the elements that we talked about. So winter is air. Fall is earth. As we're realizing our potential, we're grounding the work that we've done. Summer is water, because summer is when you're creating the most tension for the intention. So summer is water. And then spring or prep is fire. It does though. Trust me. This is all I think about all day, every day. But because spring is where you set the intention. Like the winter time, the rest period is where you're like kind of taking a step back. You're looking at the big picture. And so that's like, okay, there's all these ideas, there's all this potential. And then the springtime is like, all right, let's make a plan. Let's prepare. Let's set the intention. And then the summertime is when you're doing, because if you think about it too, like summertime is typically hot, you're doing a lot of work. That's often a lot of times when like it's very even emotionally charging in the summertime. So that's why it's related to the water element, or as you've experienced like in this build phase of training, when shit's hard, because that's usually the hardest work is in the summer because it's the most activity. And again, that's usually when a lot of like emotional shit comes up as well, okay? And then that's the earth, okay?
So can you use that like you said, like quad? Mm-hmm. You go first year prep, second year build, and then third year being the Olympics peak.
Precisely.
Last year, after rest.
Precisely. Yeah, that's exactly where we're going. Yep. So the peak is year 4. And then, which is like where we're at right now. This is an Olympic year. And then next year would be year 1, which would be a rest year. And then year 2. And then year 3. Okay? So now those numbers come back in. Because what I did was I looked at each one of these years and I asked myself,
what would be the average volume, density, and intensity for each one of the years, okay? And now this is where I'll be fully transparent. This is when I pull shit out of my ass. Everything else falls into place, but this is the one area where I just pulled it out of my ass. But again, it's an educated guess, which like most programming and coaching, or like all programming and coaching, is educated ass pulling. Okay, if you didn't know, now you know. All right, so year 4, as you'll see, the build is the average. You don't have to get too lost into that, but this is where we typically start. This is 4, 3, 4 for the average for the year, okay? And then year 4, so the cheat codes, maybe you want to write this down, but from the average to go to the peak, because when you're peaking, you're doing less volume, you're doing higher intensity. So we go down, down, up for the peak. So then the peak would be 3, 2, 5 as an average. And then the rest, from the average, we go down, down, down. Everything goes down 2, okay? So the average for the rest year would be a 2, 1, 2. All right? And then to go to the prep, because the prep is typically, you're gonna do the most amount of work in the prep, but it'll be a lower intensity. So the prep, you go up, up, down. The volume and the density are typically gonna be in step with one another.